Sheriff John Rutherford, and I want to welcome you and thank you for coming out today. Joining me today is State Attorney Angela Corey, Assistant State Attorney Matt O'Keefe, Special Agent Keisha Westner, and our own JSO Assistant Chief of Homeland Security Ray Walden, and Chief of Narcotics Advice Homeland Security Ron Lindbay. And I believe Councilman Warren Jones is on his way. We'll keep an eye out for him. What we have to announce today occurred in his district, and he's been very supportive. When seemingly random acts of crime escalated in 2007 and 2008, many in the area believed the shootings and assaults were perpetrated by people from other parts of town, and they were very reluctant to work with the police. Residents became increasingly afraid. Witnesses were identified, but they weren't cooperating, or even worse, when often they were implicated in the crime as well. In complicating the case, some of the suspects would commit crimes together and then later turn on each other. Thus proving the point that there is no honor among thieves. And a gang was operating in the area, and we were working these cases very hard. They were running a criminal enterprise, at one time numbering 43 members and associates ranging in ages from 15 to 32. This long-term investigation was meticulously done, not just to keep piling on charges on these criminals, but to unravel the enterprise. And in doing so, completely dismantle this gang. In getting these gang members to start talking and giving up information to help us solve many outstanding crimes. These people are the poster children for the deadly don't snitch attitude that can take hold in a neighborhood when criminal activity becomes a business, and even the law-abiding become afraid to stand up and say, he did it, that's the person who shot my friend, simply because they're too afraid to speak. And by the end of 2010, our detectives, who I can't identify for you on camera, had engaged the help of Special Agent Westner at the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and she had a lot of experience in making cases known as RICO. That's a racketeering, influence, corrupt organization. And as a result of some of the improving laws in Florida, gave this case some real teeth. Working alongside JSO and FDLE was Assistant State Attorney Matt O'Keefe. Matt was determined to help these detectives identify and investigate all of the crimes that might be related to the documented gang members and unravel the web of violence and corruption that plagued the Grand Park neighborhood. This team was determined to bring justice to those individuals who ran the neighborhood like terrorists who were out there running a third world country. But at this point, the neighbors had had enough, but were still reluctant to help police due to their fear. But through the tenacious efforts of our detectives, slowly, victims, witnesses, and even some of the suspects themselves began to tell the story of the Grand Park criminal enterprise. And these cases aren't easy to make, but I'm pleased to report that the individuals indicted in the official Grand Park RICO case in December of 2011 all pled guilty to the multiple charges and have been sentenced or are awaiting sentence. And I'll give you just a breakdown of what this criminal enterprise, this gang, had actually been involved in. The members of the Grand Park gang were charged with 77 felonies and 65 misdemeanors. Throughout the investigation, officers recovered 13 firearms and a lot of illegal narcotics. The leaders included Johnny Hoover, prior to his own murder, and Sedgwick Spicer. And you can see Sedgwick up here. The hierarchy consisted of those who controlled all of the narcotics and drug sales made the decisions as it related to the gangs. Others included Warren Dixon, Michael Merriweather, Darrell Lundy, and James Hall. And on this board you can see those who have been sentenced. Sedgwick Spicer was also sentenced for trafficking in ecstasy. Darrell Lundy had predicate acts that included attempted murder. James Hall had 4 predicate acts and 8 criminal offenses, including cocaine sales, gun crimes, and fighting with the police. Marcus Mitchell is pending sentence in another case and was convicted in 12 other crimes. Michael Merriweather has been sentenced for additional drug charges for crimes while we were investigating the gang activity. And then finally, Warren Dixon had 7 predicate acts and 11 different crimes that he was charged with. There are a couple important lessons we learned from these racketeering cases. And what I will first say is this shows the need in a community. If you see something, say something. Reach out, work with the police. Do not let these kind of criminal enterprises take hold in your community. Help us to nip them in the bud, as you might say. And I think what's most important about this announcement today is it shows the kind of partnership that we have with the State Attorney's Office, with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and how working together we can truly provide public safety to a community that had just been overrun with thugs. And so these fellows are all now, these times that they're doing now, these sentences that they're doing now, these are all in addition to any other sentence that they will get for their criminal acts. And so what I'd like to do now is introduce the best crime fighting partner any sheriff could ask for, our state attorney, Angela Corey.
Thank you, Sheriff. These are very difficult cases, and I want to commend Matt O'Keefe for spending 18 months of his prosecutorial life devoted to this gang RICO case. But obviously that couldn't be accomplished without the hard work of, as the sheriff has said, our excellent crime-fighting partners. Keisha, you're amazing. We appreciate your contribution. One thing I'm particularly proud of is we did this paperless. Keisha pulled this all together. And when you're talking about this many predicate acts and separate crimes and dealing with the reports and the underlying causes of all of those crimes, it becomes a mountain of evidence. And for Matt to work with JSO and FDLE to marshal this mountain of evidence into a successful gang RICO prosecution is amazing. It's a law on the books of the state of Florida that prosecutors across the state and law enforcement officers across the state appreciate. It's a tough burden, but it's one we accept because attacking the enterprise is what ultimately makes the neighborhood a safer community. What you're doing is taking this enterprise and dismantling it piece by piece and person by person. And that can't be done without this excellent law and the hard work that goes into one of these. So this is our second one in 4 years and now 6 months into my second term. We will continue to look for opportunities to use this great law, and we will always work well with law enforcement, especially the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Thank you, and Matt, thank you for everything you did representing our office. Thank you, Sheriff.
My hat is off to Matt as well. It's very difficult to prosecute these cases, and sadly for Matt, it's not over. In fact, one of the beautiful things about these RICO investigations is they spin off other investigations. And so there are numerous, I'll just leave it at that, there are numerous investigations that are still ongoing as a result of this initiative over the last 18 months. And so with, you know, as Angela mentioned, this is our second major RICO case. And we will continue to utilize this RICO hammer on the criminal enterprises and criminal operations here in Duval County, and sometimes extending outside of Duval County. So with that, I'll throw it open for questions.
Sheriff Roger Weeder, First Coast News. It sounds like this gang was running a business and terrorizing a neighborhood.
They absolutely were, Roger. I mean, if you remember, talk about terrorizing the neighborhood, if you remember when the gentleman was killed there, I think it was Canal and 20th, just shot up with the automatic weapon in the car, and there was a little girl present. I mean, you know, Hoover, Johnny Hoover's who I'm talking about. That entire community was just scared to death out there, and I don't blame them.
How many years were they operating?
Well,
You
we
said
know they
2006?
started, the investigation started probably around 7 and 8, 2007, 2008. I think it really started probably getting, pulling together out there around 2006 maybe.
Ryan Smith, Action News Sheriff. When you're talking about the racketeering issue of this, is this all drug-related, drug enterprise? That's what this is? Did any of that drug enterprise get related to actual legitimate businesses and kind of corrupt that?
No. And I don't want to go into the other elements that they may have been involved in other than drugs, but that was clearly a major revenue source for the enterprise.
Why can't you talk about those other elements?
Because there's some ongoing investigations.
I mean, are they legitimate businesses?
I can talk about that.
No.
No.
Can you tell us a little bit about the, you said they've already been arrested and sentenced. When did they go to court and how much time did they get?
You want
Well, I think that we have the sentences up here on the ones that we are able to talk about at this point. We have 2 major people that are still pending completion of their cases, so our policy is not to talk until after the sentencing. But I think if you are able to see this, it shows you that we've gotten sentences, for example, on Sedgwick Spicer. 5-year sentence doesn't sound like a lot, but when you understand that is one piece of breaking down the enterprise, and that enterprise won't be operating for that long, all the way up to a sentencing range where we can get 23 years on Marcus Mitchell, possibly.
and that's just the RICO charge.
Right.
That's just on the, that's extra on top of whatever he gets for the criminal charges.
When did all that happen?
Well, it's been going on since we announced that we were launching this investigation.
So they could have been sentenced years ago?
Oh, no, throughout the last, since 2011.
Yeah.
This has been an 18-month ongoing investigation, prosecution, continuing sentencing. It doesn't all happen in one spot at one time.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't start and end at the same time.
So this is the conclusion. These people have been sentenced over a period of time, and this is, so you say that it's ongoing, but
it's concluded for these 6 because they've now received their sentencing for the RICO.
and they've been sentenced since 2011 on various times,
Right.
along and along.
Right.
So how did they conspire? Just break it down, what was the conspiracy part of it? They were
Well, they were part of a gang. And,
Right.
and that's why, if you remember a few years back, that the state was able to change how you certify someone as a gang member. And it actually became much easier. And in fact, if you remember, a lot of folks said, well, holy cow, our gang numbers are going up like crazy. Well, we wanted that because you can only do this if you've got them certified. And so by being able to more easily certify members of a gang and attach them to that gang, you attach them to that criminal enterprise.
You can charge them with the RICO.
Exactly.
And so
that's why that was that's when I talked about, Florida law really putting some teeth in these types of investigations, that's happened.
So what is the significance of this today, then, if this has been going on for a long time?
Well, the significance is these 6 now have their RICO sentencing, and it shows what you can do when you have a really long-term committed relationship between your state attorney, who has to prosecute it, the police who have to investigate it, and quite frankly, the community also, who finally stands up and starts working with you.
So this concludes a phase of this operation.
Correct.
There's more to come, but this is a definite phase, you feel.
Correct. Okay. So we've got local, state, FDLE providing tremendous assistance in this case. That's the sort of things you can accomplish.
Sheriff, what area are we talking? Grand Park? For me, I'm not aware. Where are we talking about? Is this what part of town? What streets does this encompass?
20th Street south to Kings Road or King Street, Division, Canal. That Grand Park.
What part of town is that?
That's
Did you say
Maybe
west side, north side?
Cleveland over, it's northwest.
Northwest, Jack.
Is this gang still in operation?
Pardon me?
Are they still in operation?
Well,
They're still gang members of Grand Park Gang, yes, they're still members out on the street, still there, but as far as the organization, is not, no, it's not operating like it was in the past.
Who headed this up? Who headed up the gang? One of these?
Hoover, the one we mentioned earlier that was killed on 20th Canal, he was one of the top ones in the gang at the time.
Was that a retaliation murder then? Is that what that
That's
was?
an ongoing investigation, actually.
yeah, we can't talk about that one, but then Sedgwick Spicer rose to the top behind Hoover.
And Spicer would control the drug deals, since you can't talk to business, like what would the money come in from they'd sell the drugs, but they obviously had to buy them from somewhere. How would all that work? And is that how RICO gets involved in all of this?
That's exactly how RICO gets involved.
Can you kind of outline it for me?
Well, you have to show that they are, and maybe I should let the attorney do that, but really it's just, you show that they're working together as opposed to one guy going out and selling drugs for himself. Everybody in the gang benefits from the criminal activity. You want to say
It's like the principal theory that we apply in a sense to two or more people who commit a crime together. But in this case, the principal theory fans out to the extent that you can use predicate acts committed by these certified gang members and hold them all accountable as an enterprise. It's not really a conspiracy to do one crime or to maintain one business. It's an ongoing series of sort of what might be considered unrelated acts, but they become related because they can be predicate acts for the racketeering. And that's why when you attack the enterprise, it breaks that down. Now, are they behind closed doors in a business with a storefront? No. They conduct their business on the street. Johnny Hoover was killed right out in the middle of the street with his child in his car. So these are people who are terrorizing the neighborhood because they're conducting an illegal and a very dangerous criminal enterprise with guns, drugs, and everything else that's contained in all the predicate acts. And they do things together, and then they do things individually. But the beauty of this law is it holds them all accountable because they've decided to band together and basically terrorize the neighborhood. So that's why it's an excellent law. It's more, I think, an expansion of what we generally call the principal theory, where you're holding them accountable for each other. You're holding them individually accountable, but then you're able to hold the enterprise accountable.
Where are they getting their drugs? And what type of drugs are we talking about?
Well, we're talking about all kinds of drugs, ecstasy, cocaine, all kinds of dangerous drugs, all types of weapons and guns, and then just the terroristic acts of controlling the neighborhood. When there are good, hardworking people who live in this neighborhood, there's a college in this neighborhood, Ryan, you said you weren't sure where it was. There's a college, there's a major post office. Our downtown post office is right there at the front of Grand Park as you head into these neighborhoods. And people have a right to thrive in their homes without these types of criminals scaring them and not allowing them to live the life that they're guaranteed.
So has there been a noticeable improvement in the neighborhood since this, like crime down, people getting more active?
Yes, and that happened with
Significant.
with the first RICO prosecution that we did a few years ago. It happened as well, a noticeable drop in crime.
Sheriff, are there other operations in the city working like this, like Grant Park? I mean, they can't be the only one.
Well, as you know, and I won't talk about any that were working, obviously, but clearly, you know, we took down 45th Street, 103rd Street. So those are, clearly they're out there, and we're going after them. And that's another message we want to send. You guys think you're going to get together and terrorize this community? We're going to come after you, and we're going to terrorize you.
Real quick, did these gang members ever carry any type of signifiers, whether it be clothing or tattoos or anything that the community could actually point out? And what was it?
Well, what?
They used hand signals. They had specific hand signals and tattoos that they used to identify themselves.
What tattoo? What was a symbol or a?
Well, it's Grand Park is the gang, so it was
We can show that to you.
superimposed G and a P.
GP.
That was one of the main ones that they used.
How did you uncover the leaders? How did you do that? Informants or what? Wiretaps, what?
No.
Yeah,
No, we can't talk about that.
can't talk about how we get there, but.
As you start developing this, part of the, one of the benefits of this law is it does allow us to start actually talking with some of the minor players and using them to give us more testimony and information about some of the key players. You could even use some of the key players to explain who else is involved in the enterprise. So that's why we've all been given Matt and the detectives who actually worked this case, given them so much credit, because this is a day in and day out. It is fluent. You don't know when you begin this who you're going to end up focusing on. A couple of them, Hoover was an obvious focus, but then of course, once he got murdered, that doesn't shut down. You don't say, well, that's it. He's gone, so they'll disband on their own. We had to continue. And I'm talking about almost daily work on this case. And remember, each of these people have defense attorneys who zealously and rightfully represent them. So it is a piece-by-piece, painstaking process to try to get as much, basically, I don't want to say bang for your buck. I'm sure there's a more eloquent phrase than that. But that's basically what you're trying to do with this prosecution. Shut down the enterprise, get as much time as you possibly can. And even what appears to be a minimum sentence is a good sentence because you've broken down the enterprise.
Even though the sentencing is done on this, then can't you say, I mean, isn't all that out there of how you got them, of all the evidence? So, I mean, they've already been sentenced, so what's the secret?
Well, because there's still two pending. And possibly some stuff that could lead to more. So we're just trying to be cautious. Yes, I mean, the sentences are here. We can get you, and if you'll ask either Lori Ellen or Jackie Bernard, Jackie's here with me now, for any public record on the ones that have been sentenced thus far. We can give you any of that that you're interested in.
We just don't want to talk about how it was put together.
Catherine Riley, WC News. You said that there was a lot of cocaine, ecstasy recovered, and then right afterwards you said that there was a lot of weapons and guns, and 13 of them were recovered.
Right.
Is there evidence that they were selling these handguns?
No, I think they were.
crimes.
They were just used in violent crimes.
Okay, so the selling of illegal guns wasn't part of the enterprise.
Well,
No,
I don't know if there were any predicate crimes for, illegal sale, but I'm sure they were being illegally sold.
But it can be
acquired somehow.
just the possession of a gun at a
Right.
certain point in time throughout the enterprise can be one of the predicate acts. Racketeering is a complicated topic, but it is, again, an excellent law enforcement tool where you can pull these single incidents on single members, and then a lot of them overlap with each other, so it can become quite extensive.
You mentioned terrorizing the neighborhood. What was the nature of that? Was it like intimidating people who lived there who were law-abiding, or was it because these people were shooting each other and being violent with each other? I mean, what was the nature of the terror?
Look at just Hoover's homicide. He pulls up at a stoplight. Somebody pulls up beside him, just peppers his car, and his daughter's in the car. People are at the store right across the street. I mean, the whole, you hear stories of the folks at Grand Park at the park just down the street where they're playing baseball and football, and these folks are hitting the ground because they hear gunshots going on. So that's terrorizing, I believe.
Last question?
All right.